Before we get into today's video, real quick, I just want to wish everyone a happy and safe Juneteenth. Whoever you are or wherever you are celebrating the emancipation of African-American slaves across the entirety of the United States, I just wanted to wish everyone the best and safest and happiest day humanly possible. Now that that's said, let's get into this video.
You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so today's video, we're gonna be talking about Black Panther #1 by Eve L. Ewing and Chris Allen. Okay, so I'm not gonna spend a lot of time talking about what happened during the John Ridley run because I did several videos talking about it, but what I will say about this comic is that you don't have to have read the John Ridley run to get what's going on here. Eve L. Ewing does a very good job of letting you know right off rip where T'Challa is in his place in the world, coming from that run, which was an incredibly divisive run. Actually, would dare say, I think more people hated it than liked it. I was personally okay with the run. I didn't think it was the greatest Black Panther I had ever read, but I definitely think what Eve L. Ewing has done here with this, and I'm gonna go ahead and put this front and center now. If you came to this comic thinking that Eve L. Ewing was going to completely undo everything John Ridley had done with Black Panther, if you thought she would do away with his being exiled from Wakanda, if you thought that she was going to do away with the status quo of the Dora Milaje and the status quo of Wakanda itself, how it is no longer a monarchy, but a democracy, if you thought she was going to restore the Hatut Zaraze or fix T'Challa and Storm's relationship, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you right now, she's not doing any of that. She's continuing on the story from where John Ridley left off, albeit she's doing it in a way that I don't think John Ridley would have. Last we left off with T'Challa, he was persona non grata in Wakanda. He was 100% exiled. He is no longer its king. He is not even supposed to be in Wakanda anymore. And Eve L. Ewing, while she doesn't spend a great deal of time addressing any of those things, she lets you know that all those things are still in place, though she does tell you how T'Challa had moved on from those things. The idea that, well, yes, he is still exiled from the Golden City. He is exiled from not just the Golden City, but from Wakanda as a whole. He is still hanging out in a city by the name of Birnin, which is a city that is named after his own father. This city is interesting because while yes, it is Wakanda, this is basically the closest I think we have really seen, outside of just seeing little villages outside of the Golden City. I feel like Birnin is probably the closest you could get to having an inner city or a low income area in Wakanda. While yes, it still looks magnificent, it still has this majesty to it that we expect to see when we look at areas from Wakanda, but it also looks incredibly familiar as well. And honestly, I would dare say, not that I'm a resident of the great city of Chicago, but I will definitely say there are a lot of Chicago-isms in this book and in this setting in particular, and that is probably largely due to the fact that Eve L. Ewing is from Chicago. The city just has this vibe that is very reminiscent of Chicago. It's like, yeah, what if you took Chicago but just transported it to Wakanda? That's what this city looks like, to me at least. There's even a point where T'Challa mentions how Birnin is referred to as the Vulture, which for anyone who lives in Chicago or is even at least vaguely familiar with Chicago, there's a reason why Chicago is always referred to as the Windy City. It's because of what they refer to as the Hawk, the sheer wind and breeze that can hit you in Chicago and literally freeze you to your core. This city, Birnin, has the exact same thing, only instead of it being called the Hawk, it's called the Vulture, which I thought was a really interesting touch. As soon as I read the Vulture, I knew exactly what it was that Eve was going for. And honestly, I feel like any Chicagoan, native or otherwise, would get that same impression too. And the idea here is that that is not just in look, but it is also in vibe, because this is a city that does not have all of the same technological advancements that Wakanda proper, that the Golden City has at its disposal. Yes, there's technology, yes, but one thing I noticed about a lot of the citizens of Birnin T'Chaka is that not everyone has Kimoyo beads, not everyone's roaming around in flying cars, and not all of them have access to all the latest and greatest technology that you see in the Golden City itself. As opposed to using Kimoyo beads, most people seem to have what I won't necessarily say are regular, cell phones you would see anywhere else across the world, but they do have cell phones, and they probably are way more advanced than anything that we have in the real world, but still it's not the same as in the Golden City. In the Golden City, people just have access to more technology than what they have in Birnin T'Chaka. What it kind of put me in the mindset of is if you were to think about the idea of Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard, like in any city you go to, Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard is always one of the more iffy areas of any city. Like just about any city that has that street named after the late great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Yeah, that's just kind of what you expect. This is basically that, but the Wakandan version. And T'Challa himself no longer has access to all of the impressive technology that he's always had. Now, yes, his tech is still probably going to be better than most people's, but he's not going to have access to, Black Panther Hulk busters or any of the other crazy stuff that he has had in the past. He is working on a completely low-tech level, and this book is basically what I kind of assumed it was going to be. This is Eve L. Ewing's attempt at a spiritual successor to one of my, and I would actually dare say my overall favorite Black Panther comic of all time, Black Panther, The Man Without Fear, where Black Panther had eschewed all of the technology and even to a lesser extent, even giving up some of the heart-shaped herb. He still had it in his system, but like it wasn't something he steadily had access to during that run. So he wasn't as powerful or as amped up on tech as he normally would be. In that situation, he was closer to a more street level hero in that comic series because he was taking the place of Daredevil after the events of Shadowland, keeping protection over Hell's Kitchen so Matt Murdock could go get himself straightened out. This is a very similar situation, only there's no Daredevil involved. It's just T'Challa going to the city that's named after his father and trying to be its protector. This is probably, once again, as with Black Panther Man Without Fear, this is the closest I feel T'Challa is to Batman in this regard, and I would even dare say even closer to maybe like in status quo terms as a Daredevil in this particular case, because he's operating in the shadows. The people of Birnin T'Chaka don't even really know that he's there. Like, yes, he's operating there in the shadows. People see him ever so often, but he has become a myth of that town. To put an even finer point on it, it's heavily implied T'Challa even has his own underground bat cave. And he has to keep a low profile because if he is known to still be operating on a more wider basis, it's very likely Dora Milaje would probably come to take him down at some point. And I'm sure they would have no issue with doing that considering where they left things between T'Challa and the Dora Milaje during the John Ridley run, as well as even what happened between the Dora Milaje and T'Challa during the Ta-Nehisi Coates run. Since the John Ridley run, it's been largely implied that he has traveled across America and Europe and various other places, just trying to get himself together and even briefly talking about his re-emergence with the Avengers as of late. But ultimately, he's just trying to do the most good and let the people know that Black Panther is still out there. While yes, Black Panther is no longer their king, he will always be their protector. And honestly, I like that. I mean, yeah, the idea of Black Panther being king is still a very appealing thing. And while I know at some point Eve L. Ewing will get him back to being king, she is very heavily hinted at it in the back of the book with her message to the readership, as well as what we've seen in interviews that she has done since she was announced as being the new writer for Black Panther. Yeah, at some point he will probably be restored to the throne. I have no issue about that whatsoever. My love for this comic, or my interest in this comic rather, is not predicated on whether Black Panther is restored to the throne. But yes, I like the mentality she's taking with this book, that she's not just going to say, yep, I'm coming straight in, boop, I'm doing everything that John Ridley did that nobody liked, and I'm gonna do everything that the fans love. No, she is still going to tell her own story, and that I think is more admirable. And if she did just come in and undo everything that John Ridley had put into place, honestly, this would have been a hot mess of a book. I love the fact that there are elements from Ridley's run that come up here. The fact that, while yes, the Hattusarazi have been disbanded, that doesn't mean that they were gone. The Hattusarazi are still in Wakanda, and instead of operating as a militia or like soldiers, they're operating as strong armors. Like, they're running a protection racket in Birnin, T'Chaka, and forcing its citizens to pay up or face the consequences. We also know there's a criminal underworld in Birnin, T'Chaka that operates on a level that maybe even the Golden City doesn't know about. We see at one point when Black Panther is trying to stop one of this criminal underworld's many hitmen or thugs or whatever it is he's supposed to be, just some guy who goes out and does dirt for whoever this crime lord is that's running things behind the scenes. This guy is more scared of his boss than he is of Black Panther, no matter how striking he looks in his new costume or how he threatens to harm him. He is more afraid of his boss than he is of the protector of Wakanda, and that should say something. That means that T'Challa has a long way to go before he finally reaches that level where he can strike fear in the hearts of the people who right now aren't really sure whether or not he exists. I love this because it kind of takes you back to those early days of Batman, where Gotham City wasn't really entirely sure if Batman was real or if he was a good guy or a bad guy. That's kind of the status quo that Black Panther is in right now, and I'm here for it. People aren't even sure if it's actually T'Challa in the suit. This all comes up when we're introduced to a new character by the name of Yobe Umaru, who we later learn is the son of Changamire. The philosopher we met during the Ta-Nehisi Coates run back in the day used to operate as a royal advisor to King T'Chaka before his passing. We don't know 100% why T'Challa has taken an interest in this character outside of the fact that he recognizes that this guy is the son of someone who used to mentor him. So there's a sense of familiarity he's looking for in Yobe, but Yobe doesn't have that great a relationship with his father. So it's one of those situations where T'Challa is kind of expecting us to go one way, and it actually kind of goes the other, where it's not so much that Yobe isn't interested in Black Panther's company, it's just the fact that he doesn't really know how to act around Black Panther. And I think this is going to be something that's going to be like a relationship between these two characters, a friendship that's going to build over time, and eventually at some point Yobe will very likely become T'Challa's confidant in his time trying to operate and burn into T'Chaka. And I think at the end of the day, T'Challa was maybe potentially hoping that since Changamire's no longer around, he was killed off towards the end of the Ta-Nehisi Coates run, he's hoping that Yobe can help him find his place among Birnin T'Chaka. But we know whatever it is Yobe is involved in, we know that he's a lawyer who does a lot of pro bono work for the people of Birnin T'Chaka, try and help them stay ahead of the law and make sure they stay out of trouble. But it seems like he has some information out there that somebody is interested in, because we are introduced to a couple of new players. The first one we don't get names for, being a character who, and I don't like saying this term very often because I feel like I've said it a lot lately, but we are introduced to a character who is very likely going to be the Quotey Fingers Catwoman equivalent to Black Panther's Batman in his new status quo as Birnin T'Chaka's protector. We don't know who she is. We don't really even know entirely what it is she's capable of. All we know is that she's a very stealthy character, and I would even dare say a very fair moral compass. The idea that she probably would have killed Yobe if not for the fact that he wasn't supposed to be there when she comes to his home to steal some documents from his file cabinet. Documents we're never explicitly told what they are, what they're about, or why she even wants them. But the idea that she says, yeah, you weren't supposed to be here, that was my mistake, so I'm not going to kill you. She just simply warns him that he should keep their meeting to himself, otherwise she probably will kill him. Outside of her impeccable use of the rope dart weapon that we see her throw around in this issue, we don't really know anything else about her outside of the fact she likes to wear a lot of white. The other character we're introduced to, and this character we know his name, and it's a character by the name of Woro. All we know about this character, because we don't really even spend much time with this character, he's literally just shows up at the end, but we know he's in active competition with two other rival crime families in Birnin T'Chaka, and we know he has access to a Deathlock. Deathlocks are very interesting creations because there are multiple different versions of Deathlock that have existed across the Marvel Comics universe, and honestly they all kind of do roughly the same thing, but Deathlocks are for all intents and purposes Terminators. They're cyborgs that are relentless killing machines that have pretty much the entire superhuman power grab bag, which usually consists of superhuman strength, agility, speed, durability, all that stuff. Basically someone who would be more than a match for Black Panther. Panther. And we honestly don't know which Deathlock this is. Like I said, there's various different versions of Deathlock. We don't know if this is the Henry Hayes or the Michael Collins or the Luther Manning version of Deathlock. We don't know which one this is because honestly, they all kind of vaguely look the same. And we don't know how they acquired this Deathlock, though I'm pretty sure we're gonna figure out very quickly. Doubt this is in any connection to any of the stuff that happened with Avengers Forever. Just based on knowing what I know about Eva Ewing and the things she likes to go back to, like if the Ironheart series she did is any indicator, she went back into the 90s history of Marvel and pulled out New Warriors characters like Midnight's Fire and Silhouette. So just based on that and that alone, I wouldn't be surprised if this was the Michael Collins version of Deathlock that we're seeing here, just based on the fact that that character came out from roughly around that same time frame, and Eva Ewing does seem to be a pretty big fan of characters from roughly around that time period of Marvel Comics. I'm fairly confident that that is the case. Everything that I see here in this comic is fantastic. This comic is doing a lot of great things. It is putting Black Panther what I think is probably the best place humanly possible. I feel like Black Panther being broken back down to the street level and then seeing him rise back up is going to be a really great story trajectory for T'Challa. And I don't think he could have been put in better hands than Eva Ewing at this particular point in time. If you enjoyed this video, do the YouTube thing, like, share, comment, subscribe, and make sure you tap that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the videos I put out. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and until next time, let me know what you thought about Black Panther #1 and the relaunch and where he's at right now, all that stuff. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.